Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? Happy Tuesday. Yeah, I think it's Tuesday. I've been working so much recently that some of the days tend to blend into one another, but it's so good to see all of you. So good to be able to spend time with all of you. Um, I've had a great start to my day. I've been up since about 4 a.m. working. I also took my dog to the dog park and we went to Starbucks, get my iced coffee to start the day. But it's finally cooling down out where I live. In fact, I'm thinking of even going for a walk tomorrow morning, see how tomorrow feels as far as the weather, because it's finally starting to cool down. So hopefully I don't jinx myself, but it feels like maybe August is starting to cool, kind of start to end and maybe start bringing a little bit of an end to the summer and all that. So we'll see. But really so good to see you. If you're joining us on any platform, please feel free to participate in our global roll call. I always like to start off by everybody just saying the city, state, province, country that they're from, to be able to just add to the global community and have everybody feel included in the conversation. I know that a lot of people might be intimidated by the conversation, or I have people that tell me that they don't like putting their work out there or putting their results out there. It can be intimidating. I get it. So I encourage people to just tell us where they're from so they can participate. And if you just want to hang back the rest of the session, that's totally okay. So look forward to hearing from all of you. It's funny, but at this point, we've heard from a lot of different countries. There's still a couple of countries that come across the list that kind of surprise me that, I haven't heard from somebody from there. But it's really nice to see how many people are out there, either studying or doing data science or whatnot. It's really fascinating to me. So while I give you a chance to, again, just if you want to introduce yourself, just give us your city, state, province, country. I want to kind of start off with an opening note. I always like to start off with an opening note to give you guys some time to fill in the chat, but also just to be able to share some different thoughts with all of you. And one of the thoughts that I've been, kind of tossing around in my mind recently has been around something that came up in one of the chats, maybe last week, maybe like middle of last week. And in a lot of my content, I'm a big advocate of not necessarily jumping right into code, jumping right into math, jumping right into algorithms if you're still new to data science. And it also came up last week about, well, should I go to Google Colab? Should I go to AWS? Should I do Azure? Azure has a free trial. Should I sign up for that? And, it made me also realize how it's really important to separate your practice of data science and really kind of your introduction to data science versus the cloud portion of data science. Not just because, as I've advocated before, there's plenty of companies out there that don't use the cloud. There's plenty of companies out there that will hire you if you just have Linux experience or local development environments, right? Not cloud development environments, which are often referred to as on-premise tools, right? So a lot of those can be beneficial for you to know that as far as long term. But as far as you starting out, you being new to data science, now think about that. If you say, well, I want to do data science and I'm going to sign up for Azure and I'm going to sign up for Google Colab or whatever the case may be. Now you're not putting yourself on one learning curve. You're putting yourself on two learning curves, right? Because now you're saying, I have to learn data science and I have to learn these cloud tools, right? I'm learning data science and I'm learning Azure. So those are two completely distinct but simultaneous learning curves that you've decided to put yourself on. So try to avoid that. Don't do that to yourself, right? Put yourself on a single learning curve and make that the data science learning curve, right? I mean, that one's hard enough and it's going to take you a while, right? That's going to make your learning pattern and perhaps your ability to stay engaged and, feel like you're making progress a lot easier than if you have to say, well, I have to make progress on my data science curve, but I also have to make progress on my Google Colab curve or on other things, right? So, it's kind of a way that I'm advocating to not kind of trip over your own shoelaces and how you're learning. Simplify it for yourself. That's really what I'm advocating for here. Learn data science with a local development environment like VS Code, which is fairly straightforward to understand, and then do all the processing on your local machine. Even notebooks, Jupyter notebooks have a learning curve associated with them, right? It may not seem that way because they're relatively straightforward. But why not just execute things from your terminal, just using the standard Python commands? There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I think to some people it might seem a little bit of an antiquated way to do things, but that doesn't really exist in data science. There is no old or new in data science. It's just a different tool. So simplify your environment. Use Visual Studio Code. Use a terminal window or use some sort of local prompt to run your code. Learn data science, learn the fundamentals, learn how to do it, get yourself off the ground, get yourself moving on that learning curve. And then once you feel more confident with that, once you know like what the methodology looks like, what the process looks like, what the tools look like, you've written some, 5, 10, 20 Python programs. Okay, now you might be ready to execute in a different way. Now you might be ready to go to cloud, go to Azure, other tools, right? I think that's kind of a fairly sound approach. And I get this because, I also talk with my other friends, there's a cybersecurity influencer that I enjoy talking with. He's called You Suck at Cloud. If you see him on Instagram, sometimes I'll send him a shout out. But it applies to cybersecurity too, right? You can do cybersecurity in your little local lab, right? You can have a totally localized lab to work on your cybersecurity skills. You don't have to be on cloud, right? People kind of get enamored with cloud, like, oh, I gotta do this, and I can use this new tool by AWS, and I don't do that to yourself. Simplify it. Simplify it and say, I'm gonna have my own little structure at home. And I'm going to work it the best I can, and I'm still going to be learning. I'm still going to be developing my skills, developing my craft. And then later on, a few months into that process at least, then you can start looking at, okay, well, I know how to do it here. Let me see how I would do this on AWS. Or what's the Azure equivalent of everything I've done here? Then you're ready for it. Then you're in a much better place to do it. And you've also kind of flattened out those curves because now you're not trying to climb 2 mountains at the same time. You've already started your climb on one mountain. Now you're ready to take on that second learning curve. Okay? So something to keep in mind for my opening note. If you're just joining us, please be part of our global roll call. Let me know your city, state, province, country that you're from. Would love to hear from you. So this one comment is catching my attention. A1236. I think this might be your first time joining us. So could you please provide more details about the session? Yeah. Thanks for joining us if it is your first time. Basically, I live stream about data science every day at 1500 GMT. So whenever you see this notification pops up, it'll usually be at around that time. And we talk all things data science. So if you want to introduce yourself, you want to tell us about your data science practice, or you want to just kind of hang back and learn from others, that's totally fine. We also offer a Discord community, and we basically just try to help each other, learn and develop our practice of data science. So that's really all there is to the session. I don't necessarily have an agenda every time. Sometimes we'll do fun games or, something different just to kind of mix it up. On Thursday, I'm having a special guest come and join us for an AMA. But other than that, we just kind of convene here 1500 GMT and talk about data science. So thanks for joining us. You're welcome to stick around. You're also welcome to join us on YouTube if the widescreen view is better for you. But that's really all there is to the session. Or maybe some of the regulars will tell you what they get out of it. But yeah, we just kind of hang out and talk about data science. I'm pretty confident in saying that I'm the world's first daily data science stream. I don't think anybody streams more data science content than I do. I did. What did the number say? I think the number said I did 30 streams in June, and I'm on track to do streaming every day in August. I mean, we're already past the midway point of August. So yeah, it's just a data science stream. So thanks for joining us. All right, so I see people introducing themselves. let me go ahead and start looking. This one's catching my eye. Los Trotitas, New York, Long Island. Thank you for your content. First time joining. Well, welcome. Welcome. Always good to see the first timers. Long Island, New York. You know, I never quite made it out there. I lived in New York for 2 years, and I moved back to Las Vegas in March. So I was out there for 2 years prior to that. I'll tell you something about Long Island. That I kind of regret not making it out there, but at the same time, it was amazing. I was talking to a friend, because New York it has beautiful beaches. If you guys don't know that, there are some very beautiful beaches in New York. And I lived in Harrison, New Jersey, which is just on the other side of the river. And I would commute into Manhattan. So, for example, my office was in Lower Manhattan in the financial district, and it was about 9 miles from where I lived in New Jersey. Just to kind of give you a scope of the distance, right? So I would commute in, that's a commutable distance. In New York, unfortunately, 9 miles does take about an hour. For those of you overseas, 9 miles is about, like 15 kilometers? So 15 kilometers takes about an hour in New York, in prime time. Well, I shouldn't say prime time traffic. Every day is traffic in New York. That's one of the reasons I left, right? But yeah, I mean, I would do the Holland Tunnel in my little Porsche and everything. Just it was just what you do in New York, because I'm not really like a subway guy, so I would just me and my little 911 in the Hudson Tunnel. So one of my friends was telling me about this beach in Long Island that was supposed to be really beautiful. I believe it was called like Tower Beach or Bell Beach or something like that. I'll have to look it up. But I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that looks like a beautiful beach. I want to go over there. Or Light Tower Beach, I think is what it was called. And I put it into my Google Maps, and Google Maps told me that from my place in New Jersey to this beach was going to be a 2-hour and 45-minute drive for a beach on Long Island. And I thought, that is insane. Like, how can you drive almost 3 hours and still be in the same general metro area? I thought, that is insanity. I am never going to Long Island. It was just ridiculous how long it takes you to get there. Because, to get there from where I lived, it would be like I think it's at least like 3 different bridge crossings. And I mean, the tolls alone would have been like maybe approaching like $40 in tolls, right? So 40 US. I mean, that's a lot of money for just a one-way trip to the beach, right? But I just thought, that is insane. I am never doing that. Las Tratitas is saying Howard Beach. No, that doesn't sound like it. I'll have to look it up, because I remember where it was on the map. It was on top of all things, it was Western Long Island, which is like the closer side of New Jersey if you don't know the New York area. So like, it wasn't a far, because Long Island goes for a ways, right? So it wasn't even like a far beach. It was like on the map, I think it was only like 25 miles, 23 miles from New Jersey. And remember, Lower Manhattan's already 9 miles from me, so it really wasn't that far. So yeah, I mean, 25 miles, and it was going to take me almost 3 hours. Are you insane? Like, terrible traffic in New York for those of you that have never lived there. Speaking of New York, I see Rex Riker. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. I'm Rex from New York City. So Rex, you can tell us about that New York traffic. But honestly, it's one of the reasons why I left New York. My morning Starbucks run was 45 minutes just to get coffee with my dog. So that gets old really, really fast. So glad you're here, Rex. Patrick has managed to be first today. Good morning, Dennis and all. Good morning, Patrick. Good to see you. I think you missed yesterday, Patrick. It's good to see you. We missed you. Michael, our good friend Michael. Hello, Dennis and everyone. Michael, you've been such a consistent attendee, and I think you were there for the Sunday class too, so welcome, Michael. Ravindran, good to see you, says hello, sir. Good morning to you too, Ravindran. Stipis, I'm going to come back to your question, okay? I want to do all the introductions first. Rahul Kumar Dagra, hello, Dennis. How are you? Hey, Rahul, how are you? I don't think I've seen you before. Is this your first time? Let me know, and let us know where you're from. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I've had a good start to my day. I've had my iced coffee, so I'm feeling good and strong. In fact, it's right here. It's a nice and empty Starbucks cup because I did have it earlier this morning. Like, I think, so my schedule is that I get up, I work, and then at 4:30, I take my dog to the dog park. It's super dark. We're the only ones out there. But fortunately, I live in a fairly safe part of my city. And you know, for those of you who don't know, Las Vegas is a very, very dangerous city. It still leads the U.S. in violent crimes. But I happen to live in a good neighborhood, so I'm out there at 4:30 in the morning. It's completely dark. So I take my dog. He runs around. And he's really good about telling me when he's ready to go. Like, he'll run around and bark and, you know, do his thing. And then he'll come sit next to me where he's basically like, I'm over it. You know, and he'll come sit next to me and then we'll be like, okay, let's go. So he lets me know when we're done. And then Starbucks opens at 4:30. So we go in the little drive-through lane and I get my coffee. He gets a little pup cup, you know, the little whipped cream cup. And, you know, just start my morning and then come back and then I do more work. But yeah, but thanks for asking. I'm doing well. Is it Monica? Monica, let us know where you're from. Monica, I think it's your first time here. We start with a global roll call. Let us know your city, state, province, country, and I'll come back for the book, okay? Leo, good to see you, Leo. Leo says, good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to you too, Leo. Although I must say, Leo, we do have a growing female watchers in my analytics. That is one of my most quickly growing groups. I think my audience now is 15% female. So it's good morning, gentlemen, but ladies are also welcome. So yes, I watch my analytics for all my growing demographics and things like that, and women are leading in the growth category for me. Sarvesh, good to see you. Sarvesh from Mumbai, India. Hope you're having a great day. Wonderful, Sarvesh. Thanks. I think everyone's having a good day. Leo asks, where did you live here in New York City? So I actually lived on the New Jersey side. I lived in a town called Harrison, which is near the Red Bull Stadium. So I was close to the Red Bull Stadium, if you guys know the New York City area. Nice little city. I enjoyed it. Just didn't like the traffic. Los Stratita says, come back to visit. The bagels are good. Well, right now I'm on a diet, so there's no bagels happening over here. Not a lot of food happening over here. I'm trying to slim down for the fall, you know, trying to go slim into the holiday season so I can fatten up again. So no bagels are happening over here. You know, I still have a lot of friends in the New York City area, and you know, I've worked in financial services before, so you never know. I might end up back in the New York area. I enjoyed many aspects of it. Didn't enjoy a lot of aspects of it, but yeah, you know, we'll see. We'll see. Rex says, yeah, New York City traffic is insane. Good thing we have a good public transportation. Yeah, I hear you, Rex. I hear you on that. But, you know, I'm sorry if I'm going to be a little... I'm just not a public transport guy. You know, I'll tell you guys something, and this is an interesting stat. If you guys want to research this further and do a study on this, here's a data science or analytics study for you guys, okay? I know you guys are asking me for project ideas. Here's one of them, okay? So I grew up in LA. And I don't know if you guys know this, but people in LA are terrible about using public transportation. We have probably one of the largest bus systems in the world. We have a growing metro system. And for a long time, we had a metro system that basically nobody used. And on top of that, you know, we have highways that have the carpool lanes. A comparatively small amount, a disproportionate small amount of people use the carpool lanes. Because not only do people in LA like their cars, they usually drive alone. You know, it's not a carpooling city where you say, hey, let's drive together. You know, everybody goes in their car alone. So people in LA love their cars, hate public transportation, and that's what I grew up in. That's the nature of my environment that educated me, right? So I had a car. In fact, I was stupid. I had two cars when I was in New York. I happened to live in a building where the parking was pretty cheap, which is a rare thing in New York. You got to ask for that. You got to ask what the fees are and what the parking is, right? Not every building in New York has cheap parking, but I had a building with very reasonable parking. So I actually had two cars because I'm a car guy. I like working on cars. So I had my SUV and I had my sports car. I have an Audi and then I have a Porsche 911. So I just drove. I just drove everywhere. If I took my dog, I would, take the SUV. And if I went somewhere, like just going out by myself or into the city, I would take my Porsche. I would commute in the Porsche. So that was just me. Like, I get it. The traffic is bad, but I just wasn't like a public transport guy. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just how I grew up. It's just how I grew up. So yes, it's a lot of traffic. You're going to spend a ton on tolls. Your little, what do you call it? The little Easy Pass tag is going to cost you a lot of money. But I'm not a public transport guy. I wish I could change that because it'd be a lot cheaper. But I would pay the tolls. I would pay the parking, which was also expensive. I think my daily parking was like $50 for parking, something like that. So it wasn't cheap to park. But it's just the way I grew up. I'm a product of Los Angeles. So yeah, if you guys want to do an interesting analytics study in the carpooling and the commuting habits. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention one thing. Sorry. So the part of the LA story I forgot to mention is that we have one of the largest bus systems in the world. However, they have done surveys, and you can probably find this survey if you guys want to study this. I think it's changed since the last time I read the survey. But at one time, the average income of an LA bus rider was less than $16,000 per year. Okay, think about that. The average bus rider in LA, in this massive bus system that goes all over the LA Valley, which is a huge piece of land, the average income was less than $16,000. So the LA bus system is viewed as being for poor people. It's for the poor, the homeless, and students, right? Think about that. I mean, LA County is over 6 million people. That the greater LA area, I think, is approaching 10 million people, 8 million people, something like that. And it's basically all 8 million people view it as the bus system is for the poor. So it's not a common thing in LA for you to say, oh yeah, I commuted to the work by bus. Like, if you're a professional and you're working in LA, like, you're basically never commuting by bus. Like, that would be weird for like your coworkers to hear that, right? So I'm sorry, that's the part I left out. So yeah, again, that's just part of my nature. That's how I grew up. Okay. So sorry, let me move on here. I'm talking a lot about commuting. So Rahul says, usually I join from Instagram, so Dagra is Argod. Okay, Argod. Good to see you. Stippus says, did you enjoy the Las Vegas Grand Prix lesson? Nope, I wasn't here for that. I was still in the New York area for that. Although I still have a lot of friends that live here, a lot of locals, and they hated it. The F1 does not have a good reputation in Las Vegas. For those of you that don't know, it has a terrible reputation in Las Vegas among the locals. It closes a lot of things. The events are super expensive, more than the average person in Las Vegas can afford. It closes down way too many streets, way too much access to casinos and other places that people like to go. It basically closes off access to a lot of the center of the city. And one of the things that I don't like is that what F1 has done is they have bought a piece of land in the middle of the track. Like, I guess like the paddock area. F1 owns that. So year round, we have this big old paddock and this big white building that just sits there and does nothing. And to me, it's personally a little bit of an eyesore. Like, I don't like the way it looks. It looks like a big white boat, basically, sitting in the middle of the city. It's like this big white boat in the middle of this massive, cement area. I don't want to call it a parking lot because I know they use it for more than that. And it just sits there for like 11 months out of the year and does nothing. So I'm not enthused by that. But no, full disclosure, I wasn't here for it last year, but it has a terrible reputation in Las Vegas. People would not be crying if it went away. But it looks like it's going to be here for a while. So Leo says, oh yeah, good morning ladies. They just not in the chat. That's not true, Leo. I think we've had 2 ladies ask questions in the chat today. So I think they also joined the live stream. So trying to be fair to all of my demographics here. Manoj says, good morning, Dennis. Good morning, Manoj. Good to see you. I think you've been joining quite a bit this week, so it's good to see you. So Anybody else that's joining us, feel free to let us know your city, state, province, country. I feel like I've been talking a lot today. I feel like, I've been sharing a lot today. But you're welcome to still introduce yourself. But let me go back and catch some of the questions that came up. I got that. Okay, so Stippus is referring to my opening note and says, I do everything locally, but I've started using Docker containers for just about everything. You know, Stippus, you're bringing up a good point there. I do a lot of things locally, and I do a lot of things via my environments, but I must admit, I'm a total newbie when it comes to Docker. I mean, I know that they're popular, you know, I know the fundamentals of the tool, but I really can't point to many things that I've done in Docker. I know people love them, and I kind of sort of understand the convenience of them, like I kind of get it. But I should be doing more stuff in Docker too, so thanks for bringing that up. If you want to share more thoughts on that, you know, let us know in the chat. Or hey, maybe somebody else in the chat, let us know if you've used Docker. Are you a fan of it? Are you not a fan of it? It seems like one of those tools that once people start using it, like they really become fans of it. But you guys let me know. You know, should I switch over to Docker? I just do everything. You know, I start my environments with Anaconda, and you know, just to kind of like get them off the ground, just to bootstrap them. But after that, I just manage everything in that environment with, you know, with my pip installs or my conda installs, and you know, just command line stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I could be doing things better with Docker. But yeah, if you have experience in Docker, let us know in the chat. Monica says, can you suggest a book to refer to for data science? It depends, Monica. What part of the data science journey are you in? Like, are you talking about a beginner book, a more advanced book, a book to go into the workforce? So let me know, and I can tailor my answer a little bit better to you. You're also welcome to purchase my book if you want to support my content and my stream. Your first year in data science, it's available on Amazon. Now that book is a book I would recommend to you if you're already studying data science and you're kind of shifting your eye towards going into the workforce, right? That's what I focus on. I focus on the difference between academia and how data science is done in the real world. So that's what I would recommend to you if that's the stage you're in. But let me know what stage you're in, and maybe I can, you know, guide you a little further, or maybe somebody in the chat could guide you a little further, you know, based on getting us more information. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a ton of really good data science books out there. It just depends on what you're looking for. So let us know, Monica. All right, let me see if I missed anybody else. Yeah, Los Stratitas, I'm going to look if it's Howard Beach. I don't think it is. It was something else. I'm pretty sure it was called like Lighthouse Beach or Tower Beach, something like that. I thought there was one more question. Oh, it looks like I might have gotten all the questions already. Okay. Well, yeah, so if you guys have any questions or any other topics that are coming up, any good articles that you've read, or maybe you're just joining us and you want to introduce yourself, please go ahead. But otherwise, you know, I'm here for as long as you need me. I'm always happy to share my time and answer questions as they come up. Lustratita says, what free resources are out there for data security, network security? I don't have an IT background. Help me understand that a little bit more. Are you talking about data security and network security for data science? Or are you talking about that as an independent, like cybersecurity type of study? Help me understand what you mean by that. Because I kind of understand the root of your question. If you're data science, you know, you kind of do want to be educated on the IT side. But give me a little bit more detail on what you mean by that. Like, are you looking to move to cybersecurity, or are you talking more about specifically for data science, or like as a data scientist, what IT and cybersecurity should I know? Help me understand that. Patrick says, did we ever follow up on keeping track of experiments in our data science projects? You know, Patrick, we did not. And that is a topic that we could easily turn into its own session. So I've been thinking about what I want to do beyond the Introduction to Statistical Learning book. And that might be a session, like a deep dive into that, because it's an important topic. So thank you for the reminder. I think I want to do it as like its own independent deep dive session, right? Because we're going to finish the Introduction to Statistical Learning book. We only have 3 more sessions to go. So what then, right? I mean, I kind of want to do something special on Sundays. I want to continue to keep that as a special day for learning. So I think that's what that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing like deep dives like that. So yeah, I'll have to see where I end up with those decisions. We could also do another book. So we'll see. Patrick says, I would love a deep dive. That sounds great. Yeah, let me think about it, Patrick. You know, we still got a couple more weeks, right? But yeah, I'm thinking about something like that. We'll see. Ravindran says, is learning data science as a reward mechanism is good? Help me understand that, Ravindran. I'm sorry, maybe I'm being dense, but I'm not really understanding your question. Like, you're talking about the process of learning data science as a reward mechanism, or are you referring to the model of a reward mechanism? Let me know. Smitter says, good morning, sir. I'm Smit Patel, I believe. Smit Patel from India. Good morning, Smit. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. Any questions on data science or whatnot? Now's when we're taking them, but good to see you. Oh, Rahul. Rahul is asking a good question for the chat. Okay, guys, participation time. For anybody listening, Rahul is asking, what does reinforcement learning mean? I never got it. Okay. All right. So in the chat, give me your elevator pitch on what is reinforcement learning. Let me know if anybody wants to take that on. Nobody's going to call on you. No one's going to tell you that you're wrong. Okay. So don't be embarrassed. But go ahead in the chat. Be brief, right? Give me your elevator pitch. What is reinforcement learning? I won't give my answer because I don't want to bias the chat. But you guys tell me. Let's help out our friend Rahul here. What is reinforcement learning? How would you explain reinforcement learning elevator pitch style? Okay? So we'll come back to that, Rahul. We'll see how the chat helps you. I love the community helping each other, so. Los Tratitas says, I have a risk management rule. Stippis, I'm going to come back to your question, but just to continue the conversation, Los Tratitas says, I have a risk management. Oh, okay, very cool. I used to work in internal audit, so I totally get it. You know, it's funny you're asking that question because a friend approached me, and I'm going to be speaking at an ISACA conference in January. I actually just sent in my materials yesterday. So I'm assuming you're an ISACA member, or maybe you have a CISA. Is that kind of like the angle you're looking at this? Or maybe if you want to tell me a little bit more about, like, are you on the IT risk side, or more on the business risk side? Let me know. But you know, you know what the challenge is with something like this is that some of the risks. Okay, so Lestrotita says yes. Okay, so yes, you probably have a CISA or you're a part of ISACA. Yeah, I'm doing a conference, a talk for the ISACA, and I believe it's specifically for the Washington D.C. chapter is what I've been told. Okay, Lestrotita says internal audit background. I have a very similar background, or at least I started there. I've worked in various departments, but you and I speak the same language. So here's the challenge. And by the way, guys, let me just frame this for the people maybe who don't have an internal audit background. But basically, in a nutshell, internal audit and compliance and risk management, whenever you hear those words, you should be thinking about what are the risks to the company? What are the risks to the processes that the company has, right? So to give you like a very simple example, your CEO is caught doing a DUI, right? They're arrested and they're a DUI. They're ending up on the front page of the New York Times. That's known as a reputation risk, right? you have a reputation risk that one day your CEO is going to drive drunk and provide bad press, right? So that's a reputation risk. Somebody hacking you because you don't have good cybersecurity measures is a technology risk, right? Your company putting out a bad product that hurts people, and you have to do a product recall of some kind. That's known as a legal risk, right? So if you're a compliance professional or risk professional, you're basically looking for the policies that minimize these types of risks, right? How do we avoid having a technology risk? How do we avoid having a legal risk? Things like that, a reputation risk. And there's a bunch of them, right? There's all kinds of risks. And you can specialize in these risks. Like you can be a technology risk specialist because you have a cybersecurity background, right? Or like somebody like me, like an old man like me can do like, technology risks or data management risks, model risks, things like that. So what Los Ratitas is asking us here, they're asking us about, well, if I'm a data science professional, what risks should I be aware of for IT, right? Or from an IT perspective. So Las Ratitas, I'll give you two answers. Maybe you already know these, maybe not. You can tell me in the chat, okay? But right now, there's a lot of model implementation risks, right? Because a data science model goes through so many iterations, so many computers, local computers, so many servers, so many development environments. So I see implementation risk as being a big part of it, right? And then the second risk, I think, is really more of an emerging risk because some of the risks around model deployments and how those models are hacked are really only just now coming to light. In fact, just like 2 weeks ago, I was reading about this. And maybe some of you read about this too. But the first hack for pickle files that hold models has now emerged. It only came to light about 2 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. And if you guys are interested, I'll put the article in our Discord. And that's one of those things that has just come to light where they have found how they can modify your model that sits in a pickle file. And let's be honest, most of us save them in pickle files, right? And if we're being even more honest, pickle files have had vulnerabilities in the past, right? To say that you found a pickle file vulnerability is not unique. It's the first time it's been found in model pickle files, right? And how to modify those files. But pickle files have been a weak point for a while now, right? So Les Ratitas says, but I want to really command emerging IT data security concepts. Yeah, I get that, Les Ratitas, but that's going to be a moving target. That's really kind of my point in bringing up that example, right? That some of these risks are very much emerging risks that are only now coming to light, right? Like, again, this was like the first hack ever for a model in a pickle file. Like that literally just came out like 2-3 weeks ago. And I know that there's people in the chat, I certainly do, that maintain models in pickle files. A lot of people do. That's not uncommon, right? So Las Ratitas, I think that this is one of those things where you're going to have to just kind of keep up with the latest articles and latest industry happenings because they're really just coming to light. Like, I don't think there is a single resource that exists for, the data security concepts that you mentioned for data science, because that book is yet to be written, right? Like that blog is yet to be launched. Some of those hacks are probably happening right now, like in a development phase. I mean, not even at a documentation phase, right? So you're bringing up a good point. You're kind of ahead of the curve that you're willing to look at this. But I think that those are it. And also, I mean, keep in mind that when I'm talking about model implementation risk, I'm also talking about the tools, right? I mean, who's to say that we can't have 0-day exploits in pandas or in one of the frameworks like PyTorch or Keras or or something else, right? Like we have yet to have a 0-day LLM hack, right? Like that's yet to happen, but would you bet against that? No, right? That's going to happen at some point. I mean, who's to say that you couldn't hide? Like, I could imagine a scenario where the world's first LLM 0-day hack has already happened. It's just sitting there in some hallucinations that are happening in the answers. Like, who's to say that couldn't be the case, right? So, I'm really fascinated that you're looking at this. Super important topic. I think that you're also well ahead of the curve, which makes it a little more challenging to keep up with, but at the same time more interesting. So Lestratitas, obviously, as you can probably tell, I'm interested in this topic and I could talk about it for a while. So if you want to send me something on Instagram or even on LinkedIn, if you want to connect me on LinkedIn, you can see my audit background there. But I'd love to talk with you more about this, or if you have any other questions, because like I said, I'm going to be speaking to ISACA, so if there's something there too that I could add to my presentation, that would be cool too. So let me know more about that, but I hope I at least gave you a couple of things to think about. I don't know. I mean, like I still only wear a junior auditor badge. I'm not going to say that I'm like a senior auditor, but I know enough to be dangerous. So let me know. Let me know if that helped or if you have other thoughts. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up back here because I missed a couple of questions. Stippis says you can also customize a Docker file or Docker Compose file to fit your exact workflow and either remote into it very securely, or you can just keep the files handy and spin it up on any machine. Okay. Yeah, I've heard that containment is super convenient. I get the point. I'm smart enough to know what it's for. I just don't have a lot of hands-on practice with it. That might make a good technical session too, right? And Chief Data Scientist learns Docker for the first time. Maybe I should do that and stream that. That'd be fun, right? Because honestly, I don't have any experience with it, or not sufficient experience with it. So maybe I'll do that as a live stream. Just fire that up one day on a Friday night when I'm bored and say, hey, I'm going to work with Docker. If you guys want to watch and make fun of me, go for it. Log in. That could be fun. Let me know if that would be fun. If you'd watch that, let me know. If you want to see a session of me struggling with Docker for a while, let me know. Janu, I don't think I've seen you in the chat before. If it's your first time, welcome. I'm glad to see you. Janu asks, what's the best advice for a second-year computer science student? Stop. Save yourself while you can. Save yourself while you become one of those boring computer science grads. Switch majors. Go learn philosophy or something. That's my best advice for you. If you have more questions, put them in the chat. Leo says, haha, my bad. That's okay, Leo. That's okay. We're all learning. Okay, so Leo is also going to start off by helping our friend who asked about a reinforcement model. Leo says it's a deep learning model that learns by trial and error. Okay? Smith says try and errors solve that error. Must be this error not happening and next time. This is the basics of reinforcement learning. Okay. Stippis says, if I remember correctly, reinforcement learning is like training a dog. You define a behavior you want, and then you reward the model when it does good. Like how you give a dog a treat when it does good. Okay. ABT, good to see you, my friend. How are you? Good to see you in the chat. It's learning from the loss to come back and optimize the parameters for better accuracy. Okay. Smith says, in short, improving personalized recommendation algorithms or systems like Tesla car is the best product of example of reinforcement learning. Ooh. Smith, you had me at improving, you lost me at Tesla. We're going to come back to that. You had me at improving, you lost me at Tesla. kudos to you for coming up with an example. If you guys want to come up with an example, that'd be cool too. But I'm not sure if I'm on board with this one. Let me come back to it. Patrick, our good friend Patrick. Hey, Patrick, today you're getting the wrench next to your name. I don't know why YouTube does that. Sometimes it shows it, sometimes it doesn't. But guys, if you see a wrench or a sword next to a name, that means that person is volunteering and being one of my mods, and they do a great job. So shout out to Patrick, Joseph, and Rex for helping me with the moderation, keeping the chat and everything clean. So if you see those guys, give them a shout out, because they really helped me out. So thanks a lot for them. So Patrick says, reinforcement learning is an AI strategy for training models where they learn from experience by rewarding them for things you want and punish them for failing. Oh, Patrick. You had me at training, you lost me at AI. Yeah, we'll come back to that one too, Patrick. Stipa says, I get the theory you told, but ANN could be a reinforcement learning model as we update weights as to decrease loss. Okay. Michael says, reinforcement learning focus is on finding a balance between exploration and exploitation. Okay, that's an interesting take. I'd like to see what you mean in terms of exploitation. If you're referring to like an overfit model, I'm on board with that. But maybe you mean something else. Let me know. Patrick says, I'd watch that for sure. Yeah. It makes for a catchy title at least. Yeah, maybe I will do that as far as, Chief Data Scientist learns Docker for the first time. We'll see. Lostratita says, thanks so much. Look forward to connecting with you. Yeah, send me a message. It's an important topic. It's an important topic. So let me know. Joseph says, reinforcement learning is deep learning training paradigm where we are trying to increase the likelihood of a given outcome. Okay. But what do you mean by training paradigm? I think you're on the right track, Joseph, but give me a little bit more detail there. And by the way, shout out to Joseph. You can see he's also one of our moderators, so thank you, Joseph. Ravindran says, reinforcement learning is making an agent to solve the maze. It has to see the environment and points as rewards. Okay. Okay, anybody else? Last call for reinforcement learning definitions. Oh, sorry, I think I missed one. Ravindran says, I mean getting a reward for every concept we completed in DS, so that reward keeping pushing us to learn more. Okay, Ravindran, you were referring to the previous question about reward learning in data science. We'll come back to that, Ravindran. Remind me if I don't come back to it. All right, so if you're still listening to us, and you're too shy or you don't know what reinforcement learning is, you can feel free to pick one of the answers and say, yeah, I agree with Smith, or I agree with Patrick, or I agree with Joseph. Let us know. But last call for definitions on reinforcement learning. All right, so I'm not seeing any additional answers. So, first of all, shout out to whoever asked this. It was... I think it was Rahul. Rahul Dogra. So, first of all, let's take a step back, because you guys know that I'm very much an advocate of being able to talk to the business, right? I'm always encouraging all of you to not be the math nerd, don't be the code guy, right? So I'll give you my definition of how I would talk to the business. If this were to come up, because sometimes people read something in the newspaper or they read something on CNBC and say, hey, I heard about reinforcement learning, what is that? My answer to a business person that approaches me would be reinforcement learning is a method that we use to teach an algorithm. We have the algorithm run, it'll make its guesses, it'll make its predictions, and then I mark where the algorithm went right or where the algorithm went wrong. I add that back to its training data. I create a new version of the algorithm, and now the algorithm has learned from its mistakes. So now the algorithm knows where it went right, where it went wrong, and the next iteration is helped by that. So that's it. That's as technical as I get with business people. So I'm glad this question came up so that I can show you guys that, how I would answer, like in a total non-technical way, and just say, I let the algorithm run, and I also let it know where it went right, where it went wrong. And that's it. That's all your average stakeholder needs to know or wants to know about reinforcement learning. So carrying that forward into my conversation with all of you, I want you to understand that reinforcement learning is an approach. It's a methodology, nothing else, right? So I'm not going to point anybody out, right, or anything. But like, for example, if you used reward system in your answer, I don't know if I'm on board with that, because there are reward optimizing algorithms out there, right? So I kind of don't want to mix those up, because reinforcement learning is an approach. It's it's a methodology. It's not a specific algorithm, because there's a million ways you can do reinforcement learning with a million different algorithms, right? So in my mind, reinforcement learning is almost like a cycle. That's how I see it. I see it as a cycle. Algorithm runs, I mark where it went right, where it went wrong, human validation, the human in the loop, right? If you guys are familiar with that term, that's the human in the loop. The human in the loop validates the results, sends it back to training data, the cycle starts all over again, right? That's reinforcement learning. So I like to keep it generic, because I want you to understand that it can be used with any number of models, any number of approaches, and you guys are reminding me of this. I actually had a debate with one of my data scientists about this. Here's the key to reinforcement learning also. You can do it at any time. One of the data scientists that worked for me maybe about 5 years ago, he was under the impression, because this is the way he was taught in school, that you could only do reinforcement learning as you're building up your model for your first time. But once your model is deployed, you can't do reinforcement learning. And that's false. You can do reinforcement learning anytime. And quite frankly, you should be doing it, right? Because you should be taking those mistakes and where it went right and feeding it back to your algorithm. Algorithms are not static. They will, I shouldn't say they will. They have the potential to degrade over time, right? So reinforcement learning is something that I don't even call a development method, because it's not. It's more of it's a learning method, but it could also be a maintenance method, because you want to be doing it on a continual basis. Like if you said, we deployed this model, and every month we're going to go through a reinforcement learning cycle where we're going to strengthen it by showing it where it went right, where it went wrong, and putting that into my training data. And by the way, just because you're doing that process doesn't mean that you had to use reinforcement learning to begin with. You could completely ignore reinforcement learning, put a model out there, and then use reinforcement learning to maintain that model. That's a perfectly valid strategy, right? So again, I'm keeping things like super high level, super generic to convey the understanding that you can use reinforcement learning at any time. It's an approach. That's it. There's no more prescription than that. It's an approach to take your results that the algorithm has produced, be the human in the loop. Where did it go right? Where did it go wrong? Feed it back to your training data. Deploy a new model. Presumably an improved model, right? You'd have to monitor the metrics and things like that. But presumably you'd have a better model that you're now deploying, right? So there was a mention of AI. This is independent of AI, right? You could be doing this with any model, whether it's a small model, a big model, a text model, an image model. It literally doesn't matter. Now, where I will agree with the AI answer, where I've seen this, is that some companies out there, for better or worse, I'm not going to say whether I agree or disagree with this, have defined that little cycle that I just explained of reinforcement learning as being the difference of whether your model is AI or not. I think that's a mistake. I think you should just think about it as a self-updating model or a self-reinforcing model. But some people have fallen into the trap of thinking like, oh, well, that's AI. That's not 100% true, right? So that's why that answer caught my eye. There was also a mention of Tesla. So yes, Tesla is probably using some form of reinforcement learning for their self-driving models, for their cars, right? Their FSD, their fully self-driving car models. The challenge with that is the performance. Ideally, you should be doing reinforcement models that are self-performing on a continual basis, right? You're probably not going to have that in a car, right? With the hardware and all that you have in a car, that's probably not feasible, right? It's going to be more of a traditional update of a new model deployment that Tesla is following. The other challenge with that is one of the problems that I have with fully self-driving cars. And by the way, full disclosure, I'm sharing my own personal bias here. You are welcome to have a different opinion. But what are you talking about reinforcement learning for a self-driving car? That means that the car made a mistake. That means the car maybe caused an accident. Kind of hard to have a car accident where somebody is not seriously injured, right? And that has happened, right? I mean, so there have been self-driving accidents, some of which are kept pretty quiet, right? So it's almost a little bit morbid to think about that. But when you're talking about reinforcement learning for cars, whoops, we hit a pedestrian. We better fix that. Kind of scary, right? So yes, they're probably using it as a technique. But is that a good idea? I don't know. You guys tell me. You guys tell me how you feel about FSDs in the chat. But, I'm sharing my own bias. I think that there are some machine learning problems that potentially can't be solved. I think that FSD might be one of them, right? And we as a humanity should be willing to accept that. But, I mean, that's what you're talking about in reinforcement learning, right? This isn't just, oh, my model showed me spam when I shouldn't have been shown that spam. Let me retrain my model. I mean, this is serious, right? Somebody could be seriously injured. So there are like those weird sides to reinforcement learning. I'll tell you another example of reinforcement learning that I used, and kind of give you guys another way to look at this, right? So there will be a time there will be a lot of times in your projects where you need human validation done on your data, right? Maybe like a labeling exercise or something like that, right? And I had that. I had a labeling exercise. I'm not going to give the details, but I was working for a large client. I had a labeling exercise. And I used a bunch of my employees. I had like 6 of them to help me with labeling. So what I did was I set up this interface where they could help me label data. But as they're labeling data, I'm adding that to my training set. And in the background, I would go ahead and build the model, deploy a new model with new answers, and then take those answers and feed it back into my human validation. So to them, they're just labeling data. But on the back end, it was basically a continuous loop so that you could build your model on real-time data. So even though the model wasn't deployed, right, the model was still in development, I was using reinforcement learning in that way so that it could be real-time data. And my only criteria was that there were, I think I was using like 50 new entries. If I can get 50 new entries into my training set, like additional entries, I would fire off the process to train the model and deploy a new model. Because, the people would be working at different times, right? They were in different offices, working different hours, right? And some people would do a few entries, some people would do more. But as soon as obviously I converge that all into a single source. But as soon as my source had at least 50 entries, I would trigger it, start a new model, start new entries, feed it back to my human validators. So that's an example of me showing you where you could use reinforcement learning during your training process. Because handling a human validation team is like a whole other thing. Like if we're talking about deep dives, I could do a deep dive on that. Like there's a like how you handle human validation is like almost its own practice, right? Like you should have like a human validation expert on your team, right? But that's an example of reinforcement learning where, again, it's a process. Like there's no prescribed number for me to have chosen 50 entries for my new algorithm to kick off. It's just what I chose. It's just what I chose to put into my workflow, right? So I'll stop there in case you have any more questions. Put them in the chat. But I hope that, Rahul, I hope that helps you understand about reinforcement learning. So take a very high level view of it. You can do it in many ways on many models at any given time. It's not just for deployed models. You can use it during training. There's a lot of ways for you to use the reinforcement concepts. Some of them are quite fun. I had a lot of fun writing that code for the human validators. It was neat. So I'll stop there. So let me know if you have any more questions on it, okay? Rahul says, I agree with Stippus. What was Stippus's answer? Remember, like training it? I don't know, Rahul. I'm not sure if I'm 100% on board with that answer. Because there are reward-based algorithms, right? Like, what is it? What are they called? Maximum reward optimization algorithms, I believe. Right? So I think that's more aimed towards Stippus is describing. So Rahul, I'm not sure if I'm on board with your selection there. Ravindran says reinforcement learning is a type of ML where it uses actuator sensors based on the input of sensors. They must take the actions you need to learn AI. To understand deeply about this. Keep it high level, Ravindran. Keep it high level. It can be used in many, many ways, not limited to AI at all. All right, so Leo says, I've been designing a multi-agent network system, trying a different approach to the subject and created my own algorithm for breaking down tasks to solve. Anyone here also interested in this? Interesting question. Interesting question, Leo. Leo is one of our active participants on Discord. So if you want to connect with Leo on topics like this, feel free to join our Discord. The link should already be pinned. And see if there's a mutual interest there. Joseph says, a training paradigm being a strategy or system used to structure and guide the learning process. Yeah. Yeah, Joseph. I like paradigm. Yeah, paradigm's a good... I tend to overuse the word model. But yeah, training paradigm is a good way to describe it. Joseph says, really like how you put that. Being able to translate methodology in simple terms is vital. Yeah. Yeah, you have to meet people where they are, right? You can't be too technical with your business stakeholders. You'll lose them quickly, right? So yeah, that's how I describe it. Leo says it's based on the training concepts by behavioral psychology. If anyone was interested in reading B.F. Skinner. Okay, cool. You're making that in reference to your previous multi-agent network system. Okay, very cool, Leo. Leo also says reinforcement is just a concept that can be built in different ways. Yes, but stay away from the whole reward optimization side of it, because it's not really reward based. It's more about the validation, the human validation side of it, right? I mean, that's really where reinforcement learning shines. And also, I mean, I shouldn't just say human validation. I should be validation in general, because there are some ways to do validation without humans, right? So, another part I forgot to mention, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention this earlier, but, if you go out and do a white paper search on automated stock picking or automated trading algorithms, there's like 1 million papers on those, right? Very few of which have been successful, right? But my understanding is that some of the most successful approaches, or the more successful approaches, have been reinforcement learning related, right? Because you could do that. You could show an algorithm how to automatically execute a trade. And you could give it synthetic data and say, here's my initial like baseline algorithm that completely stinks, but it gets me off the ground and it built an algorithm. And you could have that algorithm trade a stock and say, okay, I'm going to buy now. And it buys, and it made money or it did not. Okay, put that into the algorithm. Put that into your training data. Feed it again. Okay, now I have a smarter algorithm. Now I'm going to rebuy the stock or sell the stock or whatever. Okay, that didn't work. Let me put that back in. So you could sit there, you could start off and write that bot with like, I don't know, 50 lines of code, maybe less. Because the win is not in the initial model. The win is in the model you'll have after 1,000 iterations of that, right? Where it'll just sit there and keep on retraining itself. That's where the model will win. But you have to build out all the code to say, okay, execute the trade, get the result from the trade. The result was yes or no. Feed that back into the model, keep going, so on and so forth. Right? So it's really more of that concept than it is like a reward-based system. So Leo, you say, yeah, but the next one, it won't happen. I'm assuming you're referring to the FSD discussion. I don't know, Leo. Okay, so Leo brings up a good question too. Let's say you have a reinforcement cycle, right? And you found an error in your data. The human corrects that. The human marks it as being incorrect. You send it back to your training data. And you create a new version of the algorithm. Does that guarantee that the new version of that algorithm is not going to commit the same mistake? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. It does not. So be careful with that. Just because you fix it one time does not, in your data, does not automatically fix it in your algorithm. There's ways for you to shade it and force it to fix it. But reinforcement learning does not mean that one error in one cycle that's fixed, it will now be fixed forever in your algorithm. Be very, very cautious with that. There's a million ways that I could explain that as far as to why it's going to happen again. But remember, algorithms are based on probabilities, not yeses and nos. I'll do this again. I won't do this again. It's based in probabilities, and it's also based on the thresholds that you assign to those probabilities, right? Like if I have an algorithm to press the brakes on a car, that algorithm isn't going to give me a yes, no, it's going to give me a probability. And then what threshold have I applied to that probability to say, okay, yeah, let's execute an action or not execute an action, press the brakes or don't press the brakes. So what happens if you have set a threshold to say, when this algorithm is at least 90%, gives me a 90% probability, I'm going to go ahead and press the brakes. That could be a given threshold in some algorithms, right? I'm not saying this is how Tesla does it in their brakes. I'm just saying that there are thresholds that some of these algorithms have. Human determined thresholds, right? So your reinforcement learning, your previous algorithm may have said, under X conditions, I'm going to give it a 70% probability of needing to press the brakes. And you didn't meet the 90% probability. So you didn't press the brakes and an accident happened. Okay. You go through a reinforcement learning cycle. You add it to your data. Now your algorithm is not giving you 70% anymore. Now it's going to give you 75% probability. But guess what? You're still under the 90% threshold. So you haven't really improved anything in the final output, right? So Leo, I'm not on board with your statement. The next time it won't happen. It could happen 100 more times because you basically have to step up all the way to that threshold, like beyond whatever threshold you have set. So you could go through a couple hundred cycles before the algorithm not just learns, but assigns enough probability to the final calculation to meet the threshold. To then say, okay, in this situation, I used to not press the brakes, but now I'm going to press the brakes. I mean, that's kind of part of the learning that machine learning goes through, right? So yeah, so Leo, so think about that, okay? Just because you fix it once does not mean it's going to be fixed automatically in your output. Far from it. Far from it. Kavya says it's scary. Yeah. I personally think self-driving cars are, an interesting part of machine learning. So, like I said, full disclosure, that's my bias. You're welcome to have a different opinion. But some machine learning problems may not have an answer. Stippa says relying solely on computer vision made the whole system worse, in my opinion. LiDAR and whatnot should be implemented as necessary protection measures. Yeah, I agree, Stippus. Totally agree. So if you guys don't understand what Stippus is referring to here, you are welcome to look up the history of Tesla and their self-driving cars. So what Stippus is referring to is that in Tesla and in self-driving cars in general, well, no, I'll keep it to Tesla specifically. But in Tesla, and when you're tackling this problem, there's two ways to go about it. You could do it via cameras, right? Cameras are catching different scenes, getting the images, and you have cameras all around so you can see people to the side, behind you. And then you are using like image recognition and computer vision to help you determine, okay, that's a pedestrian, that's a car next to me, that's a car behind me, I got the curb next to me, there's a stop sign, right? You can detect all of that, right? Or you could be using sensor-based, like Stippus mentions LiDAR. So that is using sensors to determine what's around you. So that's not visual per se. I mean, you can visualize LiDAR, but as a data scientist, you're doing more about the readings from those LiDAR detectors around you. So if you believe what's out there in the press, there were two very distinct camps within Tesla. There were people who were highly debating for LiDAR and sensor-based approaches. And there were people who were very much about, no, this is a computer vision problem. We're going to do it with cameras. Apparently it was a very what's that word? Very divisive split within the company. And again, if you believe the press that's out there, it did come down to Elon Musk deciding to go with the computer vision side, because he's always been a fan of that, of the computer vision side. So, he had to have the last word. It got so divisive and such a standstill that he had to come in and do the final decision on it, and they went with the computer vision side. Is that a mistake? Is that a good choice? Who knows, right? Kind of still to be determined on that, right? But it just goes to show how much of a complex problem it is, and how there's more than one way to solve problems in machine learning, right? Because that type of a variety of approaches is not unique to Tesla. It's not unique to this problem. But these are very serious decisions, right? Because there's different reliability measures that are associated with each one of those decisions, right? Computer vision is not a perfect science, right? And we've seen that, right? Tesla has had accidents, a lot of accidents. Would LiDAR have helped in that situation, in some of those situations? Some of them, yeah, you could make the case for that, right? So, yeah, Stippus, I appreciate you bringing this up. But for those of you who don't have that background, please go ahead and research it. I think it's an important topic because, at some point it will affect you in the future. But yeah, I mean, maybe LiDAR would have been better. Maybe LiDAR wouldn't have been better. Who knows? It's hard to say. But thanks for bringing that up, Stippus. Motion in golf says, how do I do that on an OpenAI playground? Sorry, Motion, I'm not really sure I understand your question. Could you? I'm not sure what part you were referring to. Stippus says, that's how my F1 model works. It pulls data from the game, it feeds into the model takes an action, and it gets new data reflecting its actions. Yeah, okay, Stippus, sure. So if you haven't joined our Discord, please do so. Stippus has posted a GitHub that contains some of his work, and that's what he's referencing here. And that's his implementation of reinforcement learning, right? He's constantly taking in new information from the game and working on that. So good for you, Stippus. Stippus also adds, if anyone is really curious about self-driving cars, there's some really interesting research on human expectation self-driving cars that I highly recommend looking into. It's very interesting. Yeah, Stippus, I agree with that. I have done some research on this also, and I have been surprised of how trusting people are of self-driving cars. Overall, from my own personal research, and I'm happy to share this study with anybody that wants it. In fact, I think I'll post it into Discord later today. I don't know why I haven't done that. People are very trusting of self-driving cars. I think that will change over time. That's my guess. But overall, people are trusting of self-driving cars. But there are a lot of, items that are still haven't been decided. I think there's still a lot more legislation to come around self-driving cars. But I'll stop there. I'm giving my own bias. But yeah. So coming back to our reinforcement question, Rahul says, I got it, thanks. But my understanding is reinforcement learning needs human validation. Am I correct? It needs validation. I know that I used human validation a lot, but it's not fully correct for me to say that. A lot of cases you are going to need human validation, but there are other validation methods that do not require humans. It just kind of depends on the nature of your problem. So like in my stock picking example, you could do that automatically, right? That you made money or you didn't make money. You could build the code to determine that and then help your model perform better, right? So that's an example where it's still validation, but not human validation. Or like if you were to do like a weather prediction model, right? You could do that without human validation. There's plenty of weather data. You can get historical data and say, my model thought this was the ground truth that actually happened. Let me feed back to the model. So you can have human-less validation processes. It's more about understanding that that's part of the cycle, that you're basically saying, this is where the model went right, this is where it went wrong. You're going to be using that for humans, or you could be doing that automatically. But I'm glad it made sense for you, Rahul. Fernando says, well, Michael says, thanks for simplifying it, Dennis. Okay, cool. Yeah, Michael, I'm glad that helped. Fernando says, how could I train a model in OpenAI most effectively? You'd have to give us more information, Fernando. What kind of model? How do you know that OpenAI has what you need? Right? People tend to rush to OpenAI, but there could be other things you could be doing locally depending on the model that you want to build. Okay, guys, so I have a meeting with our speaker for Thursday today. I'm meeting her in 5 minutes. So I'm gonna have to stop here. Give me just a second here. So for those of you that aren't aware yet, on Thursday, I'm going to have my friend Lynn joining us. She is an HR analytics executive. She's a director level. I'm only bringing you top level people, guys. So I really hope you guys are showing up and taking advantage of these sessions, because it's not every day you get to talk to a director or a managing director. So far in my series, I've had one managing director, 2 directors, and Lynn is going to be my 3rd director. I have another director for next week. And the first week of September, I'm going to have another managing director come and talk to you guys. So I'm bringing you, this week, I'm bringing you Lynn. She's an absolute expert when it comes to HR analytics. So if you want to know how HR works, the performance reviews, DEI, all those things, Lynn is an incredible expert on that. So I encourage you to come on Thursday. I already put the link in my Instagram for you to look at. I'll put the link on YouTube later today. But Lynn is really talented. She's had a lot of experience, has worked for a lot of large companies. Like I said, she's a director. I worked with her for a couple of years. So come on Thursday. Come ready to ask questions. I'm giving all my guests the options. Hey, if you're not comfortable with live stream, we can do it pre-recorded. And every single one of them, well, except for one, has said, nope, I want to be in the live stream. Put me in there. So they're coming to meet all of you. Come ready with your questions. It's going to be a fun session. But I'm meeting with her in a couple of minutes, so I'm going to have to run. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the discussion today. If you have more thoughts on the FSDs or reinforcement learning, let's keep the discussion going. Join in our Discord. You can talk to everybody there. All right, so until tomorrow, I stream at 1500 GMT. Take care of yourselves and take care of your families, and I'll see you next time.